This is a very special occasion in the history of the human-animal bond, and I'm pleased to be a small part of it, even though I'm 2,000 miles away. And I wish to dedicate it to all the pioneers in the field, and most especially to High Kitchen, who gave me this hat that I'm wearing today, which is ideal for this day in Pullman. And there's a history behind this. High Kitchen invited me out when I was a visiting professor there at the University of Tennessee, to come out and help him pick rocks out of his field. And I wore a sort of safari outfit without a hat. So he decided I should have a hat. And he bought me this hat and presented it to me, but he never would walk with me alongside of me with his hat. He'd always walk 5 feet behind. But whenever I'd go to a meeting, a national meeting or any kind of a meeting, he'd always ask me where my hat was, even if it was snowing outside. So that takes care of one hat. I have a thing about hats, and up till last week, this was one of my most colorful hats, showing my concern with pigs and promoting them in a lot of ways, including for use in animal-assisted therapy. But the people that gave me this colorful hat sent me this one last week and said what I need is a good vacation and go fishing. So this is my fishing hat, and I'm having to keep it under lock and key because it's so very popular. The hat that I've been wearing the longest, going now and be my 45th year next year, is my veterinary medicine hat. And I'm still working away, but staying very close to home. But I'm here really to tell you that I'm tired and I'm sort of burned out, and I need a lot of help. And that's part of the talk today. And that brings up a subject of another hat, which I'll show you. And then this is my Norwegian power hat. And I wear that a lot in the winter. And unfortunately, my Norwegian power is got up and left, I believe. So that's, again, my justification for asking you to help me. I've thought a lot about animals and interaction with people. I've experienced it essentially all of my life. And in high school, we judged cattle, sometimes at mental institutions and at prisons. And I thought that was a very good idea. And I know how much the animals meant to me when I was growing up. And so I was fitting some of the pieces together, but I didn't have a structure. I visited some places in Europe, I guess in the late 60s or at least in the early 70s, in Norway, where they had a center where they utilized animals to help them in a sports center, and also at Bethel in Bielefeld, West Germany, where they used animals in their therapy. And I studied the history of all of this. And then one day, in a fit of senile dementia, I accepted a position of dean at my alma mater. And then I said, well, we got to put this thing together and give it a structure. And one of the fortunate things that happened is that Linda Hines was hired in the College of Veterinary Medicine as an editor. And she and I decided to put a structure to all this. First of all, we studied what the situation was. What are the problem areas? And we did a sort of a crash course on defining the problems. And I'll just list some of what we found here in this little haven in the hills in Pullman, Washington. The year that we did this, which was 1974, there were 15 to 18 million dogs and cats killed in our animal control centers that year, which is a lot of blood on the floor. And you say, well, they were stray animals. 80% of them were owned by somebody. And so this was very bad news. There was widespread irresponsible animal ownership among the students and among the townspeople. I talked to veterinarians. What percentage of your clients are responsible animal caretakers? And I was a long time finding somebody who thought they had over 50%. Animals are also regarded as recyclable items, throwaway items, which shows some lack in their education and experience. And there was failure in control of pets. Only a minority of people gave obedience training to their animals. So we had a bunch of dogs running around who were really juvenile delinquents. There was a general lack of knowledge about behavior of animals and its modification. And there was little animal exposure and information for children in our school system. We actually did a survey of the school system, which are enlightened school systems here in Pullman, Washington, and in neighboring Moscow, Idaho, at home of the University of Idaho. And we found that they really needed something in their coursework on animals so that we can have more responsible animal care. Also, we realized that many disabled people had no access to assistant animals in any form. In fact, even today, as I'm talking to you, there's probably maybe up to a 5-year wait for an assistance animal. And at this point, little research had been done. So to address these serious problems, we did the following. We started classes immediately at night for the community, and then realized if we were going to change the world, which we needed to do, we had to get to the children. And so we established a program in the local school system. We developed a curriculum, and we packaged it, and it's entitled Learning and Living Together, Building the Human-Animal Bond. And we've marketed quite a number of those, I guess several hundred of them. And Hills, Jack Mara at Hills, purchased about 700 or 800 of them, or rather published about 700 or 800 of them, and distributed them to veterinarians and their associates to start programs in schools throughout the country. So we know there's at least probably 1,000 out there now, and some in foreign countries. In fact, as I'm speaking to you too, the Japanese are translating it into Japanese to use it in their school systems. And we felt there was also there was a need in other areas. There was a lot of people wanting to visit convalescent homes and nursing homes and hospitals. So we developed the guidelines for the placement of animals in nursing homes, and this has been quite a seller. In fact, we're about sold out of them. It was published by the California Veterinary Medical Association in cooperation with the Delta Society. We were the ones that really wrote it. And we also have developed for our primer, we have added various chapters to it for the children. One of the next to the last ones we've added was on bereavement and loss. We feel that children should have this kind of education. And this one is a very popular one and an important one. It's called Preventabite, Lesson for Preschool through Grade 2. And Terry Ryan wrote that. And it's, as I say, it was an award winner, but not to the extent that the Puppy Primer was an award, a real award winner. And it's been very well received, and we feel that this is very important, that people give obedience training to their animals, and that they select their animals properly and raise them properly. So these are all things that we have hopefully done that will help other people. We also have decided that among the people that probably have the least nurture are prisoners. And probably in their lifetime they have had probably less nurture than most, and they don't have suitable nurturing objects in prison. In fact, they're not allowed to any nurturing in prison. And I maintain that you can't be a human being and not have been nurtured and have suitable objects of nurture. In fact, we are by nature nurturers, and we have gone through thousands of years nurturing one another, our natural environment, and our animal companions. It is only in the recent past that we have gone to industrialization, mechanization, urbanization, and where people up to half or more of the population have been separated from any interaction with animals and with our natural environment. And so we're paying a very high price for this today. And so that's why we felt that the prisoners needed our attention. And we set up a program where the prisoners would train animals from the Animal Control Center in obedience training so they'd be better adopted by people and better retention. So we can address that very serious problem, which I mentioned in my opening remarks. And also, some of the prisoners were capable of training these animals, custom trained for people that needed a special assistance animal. And we'd have the prisoner, wherever possible, meet the disabled person that they were training for, which had a remarkable effect on the prisoners. It changed them, because here they had a nurturing object. They could take it with their cell to their cell at night, and so they had this interaction with them, and they were in a nurturing posture. In fact, there's been some interesting things developed from this. One of them is that about the second or third dog trained by Sue Miller was a girl who was about 14 years old when we found out about her, and she had a multiple array of seizures. Some of them were life-threatening. Had them all her life. Required the presence of her mother and father to be with her at all times, night and day, or her sisters and her brothers, which is a very heavy load, and they wouldn't always catch her in time. And so she'd on occasion stop breathing and wipe out her memory. So this was a tough situation. Well, she was brought to the prison, introduced to Sue, and Sue trained a dog for her, Sheba by name. And when she got Sheba home, the dog, she realized, was signaling an onset of seizures in her before she knew she was going to have a seizure. And now since that time, several other dogs have been trained for this. And this is a very important area. In fact, I have proposed, as others probably have too, that if we really study this, we can probably do for a lot of people what we did for Angie here. Angie was with this dog, the number of her seizures were reduced, the extent of the seizure was reduced. She finished, instead of going back to the first grade, she was finished junior high and high school. She competed in the Special Olympics, and a couple of years ago took third overall in gymnastics. And the last I heard, she has a boyfriend, and hardly is in need of a dog now to warn her of seizures oncoming. So this is just one example of what could be done. And I feel that if we examine the population of people who are suffering from epilepsy, especially the children, and we train an animal to help them or to be a companion to them, it would probably remove or reduce their number of seizures and their extent. And I think it's worth a try, and it would have a remarkable payoff. Now, the structure for doing what I'm telling you now is how we decided to make this a manageable body. What we did, we said we were going to form a series of partnerships called a Picopet Partnership. And the first one is the Education Partnership, which we've already discussed with our curriculum. The Companion Animal Partnership, where we go in prisons, we helped set up this prison, and then they took it over. We visit nursing homes and convalescent homes, place animals or just visit there. We also have the PEAT program, which is a partnership in equine therapy and education, where you ride for the disabled. That has been a very successful program. I think we were the first university to have a riding for the handicapped program. It's been underway now for over 10 years, and it's called the PEAT program. That's an abbreviation. I mentioned the prison partnership, which was taken over by the prison people, although we still consult with them. And a recent addition is a pet loss partnership, where we do counseling. We have a professional counselor, Charlene Douglas, who has a lot of business, and it's surprising how many people out there are really hurting. So that's how we structured the whole thing. And then while we were doing all this in the 70s, in our little corner of the world, other people, many of you, were doing something too in addressing these issues. And of significance probably to this audience are two, I think, significant events in the history that you are making here today. The first one was in the late 60s. A veterinarian friend of mine named Bill McCulloch was reading material by Boris Levinson, a pioneer in this field. And that was in the late 60s, as I recall. And he proceeded to do something about it. He published a paper late in the 60s, briefly alluding to this. And then he got his Dick Dorn, one of his associates, interested in it. And then he got his graduate school mentors, Doctors R.K. Anderson and Stan Deesh, interested into it. And of course his younger brother, who was a brilliant psychiatrist. So they decided what we needed to do was to form a Delta foundation to obtain money, to do studies, to show the efficacy of this new, so-called new therapy. I think he added some other people along the way. I think Joe Quigley for one. But that's where the Delta Society really had its foundation roots. And the second event leading up to today was a special meeting on grief and loss in the animal world. And it was held, sponsored by the Animal Medical Center in New York, an outstanding animal medical center, in cooperation with the Columbia Presbyterian Hospital for Human Medicine. And it was a very successful convention, and we had a couple of rump sessions to discuss what's the next step in this. And we had leaders in veterinary medicine, professionally and administratively, and at American Veterinary Medical Association, some presidents or former presidents or future presidents. So we had a lot of big timber there, and we decided what we ought to do is convince the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association, that they should start a committee, have a committee that would address these issues, which we did. And they did form the committee, which has done all this remarkable work and promoted it, and that's how you came to be here today. And I must say that we benefited greatly in our program by the Delta Society, which we helped form too. But this interchange with all the people in so many disciplines really helped, I think, all the programs, and I know it certainly helped our Picopet Partnership. And that's why, if it would have been such a warm day, I would have worn this sweatshirt which says Picopet Partners, College of Veterinary Medicine, Washington State University. And we see more and more of these kind of organizations growing up, and we're happy about it. And if it would have been a cold day, I would have had both sweatshirts on. This is the Delta Society, which has meant so much to us. And they have a technical journal, which is highly regarded and well reviewed. And they also put out a magazine called Interactions, which you find, I think, very useful to you. Now, I've made a list of I suppose, a dozen or two of things that I need help in. And I'm just going to select a few of these. I've already hit some of the points before. So I'll go quickly through some of these. You veterinarians there today can provide counsel regarding disease, animal temperament, and selection criteria for any utilization of animal in the field we're talking about. You need to become better informed about behavior and its modification. You should inculcate reverence for life in curriculum, in any curriculum that you have some input into. You should serve as a resource for disabled people, and there are a lot of them out there and growing in numbers. You should improve the ability to deal comfortably in a comforting way with people who are disabled. You can help in cooperation with others to develop innovative measures to provide for needs of companion animals owned by those who are unable to provide for all their necessities. We should assist in organizing members of the community to visit with selected animals in institutions whose members could benefit by them. We should work to provide for animal visitation and residency or residence animals in hospitals and hospices. And Delta's Pet Partners program can help, I think, provide a basis for implementing this. Another thing you can do, and I'll help in my late years, assist in establishing reasonable guidelines in legislation regarding animals in institutions and public housing, and establish disaster plans for animals. And you might want, for here, you can write to Gay Hancock. I know they had a program set up in the Tampa Bay area. And you should encourage, I tell people that they should have, when they ask me that they should get a cat, I said, no, you get 2 cats. Or if they're going to get a companion animal, I try to get them to have 2 companion animals, especially for elderly people, disabled, or single people who are gone from home during the day. It's a good idea, too, if they have different ages involved. I should also help implement animal programs in penal institutions. I've already mentioned one of the exciting things of seizure detection. We also observe that there's seems to be a blocking of pain among children when you have an animal present, when they're involved with painful procedures. The pain seems to disappear when they have access to an animal, and that needs further study. We should improve the ability to deal with grief and encourage counseling sessions at every level. We should include questions on the presence or absence of close-funded animals in any future national survey having to do with health, such as from the National Institutes of Health. These are very expensive procedures, and it turns out in a couple of recent studies that with numbers, that those people who had pets were better off than those that didn't have pets. That's health-wise. Conjointly with others, experts establish certification criteria for the classification of assistance animals, and this is a very needed thing. And then help to develop strategy for the third-party payment for animal-assisted therapy, and promote programs that train certified assistance animals. And this is a much-needed program. And then another thing that I've been thinking about for several years, we have now many businesses establish child care centers. Well, I think that there's enough people out there now who need animal care centers associated with businesses and all, because there's a lot of people living alone. It's a very expensive procedure. It isn't, first of all, good for the animal to be left alone all day in most cases, and if they want to put it out to every day for maintenance, it's a very expensive procedure that many of them can't afford. So I'd like to see some businesses try this out. I've been trying to promote this for quite a while. And I want to make a point here, too, that's so very important. And in all of this, we talk about animals helping us. We are here also to help the animals, and it isn't fair to them not to have first-rate treatment, and if their utilization is going to compromise them, they should not be utilized for that procedure. So I reached the final paragraph at long last for you. I believe, as I take leave from you, that an interesting area with great potential for benefiting and enriching the lives and conditions of people and animals is opening to us in research, service, and training, and teaching too. By working with colleagues worldwide in a variety of disciplines, we can develop new and creative ways to realize the potential inherent in people, animals, and environmental interactions properly studied and utilized. On the basis of my experience for the last 2 decades, I am devoting my remaining days to this adventure, a call for compassion, educated concern, nurturance, and its early incorporation into our educational curriculum, and reverence for all of life. My plea is that we heed the words of Alfred Tennyson. Come, my friends, it's not too late to make this a better world. Our dear friend Michael McCulloch often closed his talks with a quotation from the stained glass windows on Mayo House in Rochester, Minnesota. And it addresses our responsibilities today, is to cure sometimes, to relieve often, but comfort always. I wish you well in this endeavor. All of us must reduce rooting and concentrate on planting and watering. I want you to know that I am most grateful to you who have made these past 2 decades the most interesting and rewarding of my life. Onward and upward.